Fellas, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a full grocery haul at Grand Lucky Supermarket here in Bali. This is going to be a preview, insight into all of the foods that I eat during a bulk, when of course trying to limit fat gain. So if that is your objective right now, you're in the right place. Let's get into this. So in terms of my nutrition whilst I'm in Bali, one of the many benefits of being in Bali is that it allows you to offload tasks to other people for cheap. So I actually pay a lady to cook my food for me. So she comes to the villa on a Monday, Wednesday and a Friday. So today I'm just going to pick up the food and then I'll probably send it to her house to cook it for me because she's a legend like that. So first things first, lemons. I pound lemons. I probably get through at least 2 or 3 a day. I put them in my water in the morning with some salt just to hydrate if I'm not using electrolytes that morning. And then I'll also squeeze like half of one on my eggs and then another half on another meal that's appropriate. So, oh, sorry bro. Causing a scene in here. So another fruit that I eat a lot of is papaya, which is a tropical fruit. For those of you that haven't tried papaya, it's can't even compare it to anything, to be fair. It's got a unique taste. Pretty neutral, but it's yeah, it's decent. It's about to say like a mango. It's really not like a mango. Consistency wise it is, but taste it's not. But yeah, papaya is good. I'm a big fan. I do probably half of one of these a day. And then I also do bananas. I have 2 bananas a day. But these bananas don't look the best, if I'm honest. Bananas secured. So vegetables. Vegetables are pretty debated in the nutrition world. You've got people that are massive fans of them, got to get your fiber in, and then you've got obviously the carnivore guys that are bang against it. I kind of sit between the two. I like to eat some plant matter just because I find that these foods do add nutritional value in addition to vitamins and minerals that you can't really get from, say, meat alone. That being said, I do think fiber is overrated. I don't think fiber is as needed as people make out for it to be. If we think ancestrally, we wouldn't have eaten that much fiber. And I often think that constipation, for example, that's a big reason as to why people are big on fiber. I actually think constipation's often caused by stress and subsequently mineral deficiency, particularly magnesium. So if you address the minerals, you regulate your nervous system, you get your stress on point, typically you won't be constipated and then feel the need to add fiber, which could be driving digestive issues anyway. So if that's the case for you, fuck the fiber off, get your stress on point and you'll find digestion will probably improve. But like I said, I do eat a bit of vegetables, mostly just to add to meals to give it a bit of something. So my third meal at the moment is a chicken and wrap meal. That in itself is quite boring, so I add a little bit of vegetables into the meal to, like I said, just jazz it up a little bit. I'm not actually going to buy the vegetables today though, because Annie, the lady that cooks for me, she makes a vegetable mix for me. I don't actually know exactly what she puts in it, but it bangs. So I'll let her sort the vegetables out. Right, next up is butter. I am a big fan of butter. Good source of your fat-soluble vitamins, your A, D, E and K, particularly vitamin K. Vitamin K is quite a hard nutrient to get, vitamin, sorry, so butter's a good one for that. So grass-fed, obviously everyone knows the crack nowadays with the whole grass-fed hype. So yeah, grass-fed butter goes in. I have that with my mountain of sourdough in the morning. So yeah, probably do about 20 grams of that a day. Now in terms of breakfast, what I tend to have is eggs, sourdough, grass-fed butter, and then occasionally I'll bang some vegetables on the meal as well. And then obviously the lemon, as I mentioned earlier. In terms of eggs, I tend to go for the most expensive ones, if I'm honest, just because I do think it's important when it comes to eggs to try and go for quality as opposed to being a bit of a cheapskate. That being said, is it going to kill you? No. I think as a general rule of thumb, if you are opting for cheaper, poorer food ingredients, That's fine because obviously everyone's budget's different, but what you need to ensure is that you are taking all of the quantum stuff more seriously. And when I say quantum stuff, for those of you that don't know, this is your connection to nature. Because the more connected you are to nature, the more sunlight you have in your life, the more artificial light that you limit, you will be healthier as a human for doing that, and subsequently your ability to detox will be much higher, much better. So you'll be able to get rid of the bullshit that comes with the poorer food sources. So yeah, just a little tip for you in that regard. But yeah, organic eggs, I do 5 whites and 3 whole with a mountain of sourdough, the grass-fed butter and the vegetables. Right, what next? Fish. So when I just mentioned the quantum stuff, connection to nature, all of that shit, to keep things super basic, this is all done to build something called your redox, which is your net negative charge. We as humans, we're designed to be negatively charged. When we become more positively charged, that's when inflammation kicks up, that's when chronic disease sets in. So all of the quantum stuff will help us to hold down the negative charge, build good health. So of course, we protect the redox and we don't become chronically inflamed and subsequently run into disease. Now, one of the most important nutrients we need to consume in order to protect that redox is DHA, which is an essential fatty acid. This is found in seafood, which is why seafood, for me, as per the work of Dr. Jack Kruse, is one of the most important nutrients because it's basically an electron bomb. Now, I'm not going to blow your head off with the boring science in regards to electrons and stuff, but basically that helps us to maintain that negative charge really well because it's providing so much negative charge for us. So in terms of seafood, at the moment I don't eat a lot because I've got an egg-based meal, then a whey, then a chicken, then a steak, then a whey. But I'll go and get oysters 2, maybe 3 times a week, and then I'll occasionally sub out the steak-based meal for some salmon, which is what I'm going to do today. So I will get 3 salmon fillets, and obviously oysters I'll get back in Canggu when I head back that way. Salmon's a bit of a debated one in terms of quality. This says salmon premium fillet. Is that wild caught? Probably not. But again, as I said earlier, if you are going for poorer food sources, you can't get the wild caught or you can't get the grass fed. You have to get the farm raised or the non-grass fed, corn fed, whatever. Build your redox, connect to nature, your body's gonna operate more efficiently, be able to detox the bullshit out. That's the sort of stuff that the likes of Paul Saladino, Carnivore MD, don't talk about. And I believe he doesn't talk about that stuff because obviously he pushes the whole nutrition approach. Health is a lot more than just nutrition. Even though that's my game, I don't talk about nutrition that much because if I'm honest, I think it's overrated, as backwards as that may seem. I think all the other stuff is much more important for promoting good health. Of course, nutrition matters, but as I said, if you have to eat the fucking farm-raised fish as opposed to the wild caught, but your redox is on point because you're connected to nature, I don't think it's an issue. So anyway, enough yapping from me, I'm gonna get some salmon. Do I need to wrap it or with some slippery salmon in my basket? Jesus Christ. Thank you, brother. Awesome. Thank you, mate. So as I mentioned earlier, one of my meals in the day is a steak-based meal. I get my steak in Canggu from a place called the Meat Emporium, which is a pretty decent supplier of meat, to be honest. It's all from Australia, all grass-fed stuff. Fucking expensive though. So if you're not willing to, or you don't have the budget, whatever, for steak, ground beef's a decent alternative. I used to pound ground beef when I was a uni student. So yeah, get some ground beef, and I would suggest getting some red meat into your diet. I do feel like it is a bit of a nutrient powerhouse. Organs, well, seafood first, organs second, then your skeletal meat, which is obviously your ground beef and your steak and so on, in order of importance. So as I said, if you can't afford the steak, definitely get some ground beef in, so you can get the nutrients that you need to thrive. Fat sources. As I mentioned earlier, I do grass-fed butter with my first meal of the day. I also use coconut oil to cook with, just to lubricate the pan. Coconut oil is a really good oil to cook with because it's such a stable oil, so it doesn't go bad at high heats. So if you are frying, use a coconut oil. Quite a lot of coaches, nutritionists will tell you to use low-calorie sprays. I personally don't like these because they're often blended with sunflower oil, canola oil, which is a terrible oil for health. So yeah, I do grass-fed butter, coconut oil. I also do extra virgin olive oil. However, in Bali I don't, just because it's hard to find a really good extra virgin olive oil. Even these ones, what's this? This is a fiver, it's £5. What's that in dollars? $8, $10 or some shit. What makes a good extra virgin olive oil a good extra virgin olive oil is it being in a dark glass bottle, so this is good, but also having a harvest date. Most olive oils will not have a harvest date because having a harvest date is a flex, because it basically tells you how fresh the oil is. Because all of these oils will have been sat on a shelf for so long, they won't have a harvest date on them. So if you're a snob like I am when it comes to oils, try and find an extra virgin olive oil in a dark glass bottle with a harvest date that spans back no more than 12 months, ideally 6 to 8. And then you know you're onto a winner. But like I said, because it's so hard to find in Bali, I just stick to the grass-fed butter and the coconut oil as my direct fat sources. Right, carbohydrate sources. So I've been over protein, been over fat. Carb sources on my current diet are sourdough bread in the morning, which I'm not buying here. I get at a health store back in Canggu because there's no sourdough here. The reason why I have sourdough is because, put simply, it's got about 4 ingredients in, compared to normal supermarket bread, which has sort of 10 plus. So sourdough is just a cleaner bread source, digests really well for me, which relative to the phase that I'm in, pushing food on a weekly basis for 20 weeks plus, you need to make sure that your foods that you are consuming are digesting well for you. Even if they are a healthy food, if they do not digest well for you, fuck them off, because if your digestion goes to shit in a push, you can't get the calories in, you can't ascend up the scale, the push is going to be a big fat fail. So yeah, opt for foods that digest well for you. Back to the carb sources. So sourdough in the morning, then I do oats 2 times a day, and then I do rice. One thing to consider when it comes to oats, there is a debate. Are oats healthy, are they not? I don't think oats are healthy. They're a grain. They do have phytic acid in, which does something called chelates minerals out of the body, which obviously is not a good thing, because maintaining good mineral status is really important from a health perspective, particularly maintaining that redox, which is what I was yapping about earlier. That being said, I think if you supplement wisely, don't abuse supplements, but if you supplement wisely with electrolytes and additional minerals like magnesium, which is what I do advise, I think oats aren't that big of an issue. Again, of course, if you stay nice and connected to nature. So there's the phytic acid element of oats, but there's also the glyphosate element. Glyphosate, obviously, sprayed onto plant matter can be a bit of an issue, but again, stay connected to nature, build a good redox, your ability to detoxify that BS is going to be a lot higher. So this is where these foods aren't, I believe, as big an issue as people believe them to be. Your redox is basically your armor when it comes to health. So if you build that shit, like I said, you can get away with eating unhealthy or processed foods to a better extent. And that's why when you live in a sunny country, it's a lot easier to maintain health, which is a big reason as to why I came to Bali. Not gonna get into that now because I'll yap on. I can yap on for ages about all this shit. So yeah, oats, I'm not gonna buy them here because you can't get organic relative to the glyphosate thing I just mentioned. If you are gonna get oats, shoot for organic. If you can't do organic, get the normal ones. You're not gonna die. Getting stressed about nutrition is probably a lot more unhealthy than you know, eating non-organic stuff. So do whatever, as I always say, fits the budget. Rice. So this is the third carb source I have. For me, in terms of what I eat rice-wise, I do organic just to limit the heavy metals and the glyphosate, just because I am willing to allocate the budget towards it. But again, back in my uni days, I didn't do that. So it's not an issue. You got to do what's relative to you and, you know, where you're at, what you're willing to allocate. So I just do organic jasmine rice, one meal of that a day. Job's a good one. Right, next carb source. I'd actually forgot. I have fruit in my diet, don't I? So that's an additional carb source. Banana, papaya, and then the oats, the rice, wraps as well. Also do some frozen blueberries. I always get frozen just because when they're frozen, the key nutrients in blueberries actually last for longer. Plus as well, the blueberries themselves do. So pro tip, always buy frozen blueberries. I bang these in my oats. I do about 150 grams in both of the oatmeal. So 300 grams a day. I fucking plow through blueberries. Good stuff. Now that's the nutrition side of things pretty much done. In addition to the actual food itself, accessories. So I do apple cider vinegar. I use the Bragg's brand. When you're using apple cider vinegar, it must have the mother, which is that horrible shit at the bottom. So don't buy apple cider vinegar without the mother, because that's why you're having it. The reason why I do apple cider vinegar, I'm not going to get some today because I've already got some at home, is because it helps to increase stomach acidity, which basically helps you to break down food more effectively. If you can do that, you can then absorb the nutrients more effectively. When it comes to nutrition, as I'm sure you've all heard, it isn't just about the food you eat, it's about how well you absorb that stuff as well. So things like apple cider vinegar can be of benefit. But what I will say is, the white girls, people like that, they hype about all this sort of stuff far too much. You see the morning drinks, the apple cider vinegar, the cayenne pepper, the lemon juice. I don't obsess over that sort of shit. Like, yeah, I do have it in the mix, but I'm not like, this is what's driving health. What's driving health is the seafood, the steak, the organ meat, all of that good stuff. This is just fluff to add in for little bits of benefit. So yeah, if you are gonna, like I said, have the apple cider vinegar, it's gotta have the mother. So next accessory that I get is salt. Super important stuff, especially obviously when you're busting your balls in the gym. Biggest benefit, the salt, obviously being an electrolyte, sodium, mineral status is very important for driving good health. Also, the reason why salt is so important is because it helps to boost blood volume, which is going to allow for that good pump when you are in the gym. The old BS around salt causing high blood pressure is complete horseshit. The reason as to why people have high blood pressure is because they have dysregulated nervous systems. They're disconnected to nature. They lack grounding. They don't stand on the earth barefoot. They lack sufficient amount of sun exposure, particularly mid-morning sun and late afternoon sun, which is high in UVA light, which is what helps you to build nitric oxide and lower your blood pressure. And then also stagnant lymphatic systems. That's why people have blood pressure issues, because they're sat on their arsehole all day, they don't sweat, and they don't manually move their lymph, because you need to manually move it, unlike the blood, but I'll save that sort of stuff for another video. But don't fear salt. You need salt, and let the body guide you in terms of how much salt to have, because if you have too much salt, your body's going to let you know. Alternatively, if you need salt, your body's going to let you know. So I just do sort of a heavy sprinkle on meals. Again, I'm not going to buy this salt just because I prefer the salt that I use, which is Redmond real salt. So yeah, salt, super important. Finally, in addition to seasoning, which I didn't get because Annie's got all that at home, sauces. I don't really use sauces, if I'm honest. On my eggs, I do lemon juice and I do salt. I might do some sauerkraut, which I hadn't mentioned. I do that in the wrap meal or in the rice meal. And again, salt and lemon, but I don't tend to really use any sauces. Even though I'm in a push and I can, from a caloric perspective, I just don't feel like I need it. I'm just not a massive fan of it. And I do feel like as well, the tighter you are with your nutrition, the less processed food that you eat, the less you will crave additional sweet things like this. That being said, if you do want to add, you know, 20 grams on a meal or whatever, as long as it's within your caloric allotment and relative to the goal that you're in, shoot your shot, but I personally don't really need it. So something that's also worth considering, which I don't see anyone really talk about on these grocery haul trips, is water. So the type of water you use. Because I don't have my own house in Bali, I don't go crazy on the type of water I use. If I had my own house, I would have a filtration system, but because I'm in a villa, I just have a normal water dispenser. And it's coming from a large, I think it's a gallon size or whatever, bottle, from a plastic bottle, which is not ideal at all. But as I've said numerous times in this video, because I'm so connected to nature out here in Bali, I get so much sun, I believe I'm able to get away with the microplastics that come from the water because I'm constantly ramping up that detoxification because I'm building so much melanin, suntan from the sun, which I'll go into in another video. But if you are shit hot on health and you do want to absolutely optimize all aspects, in terms of water, I would go for a spring water from a glass bottle as opposed to obviously plastic. But if you've not got the budget for that, or you're just not as bothered, of course, just, you know, get whatever you want. But I would certainly say just avoid tap water, because tap water has typically fluoride in as well as other metals which do impact your redox, which, as I keep saying, is super important from a health perspective. So yeah, that's what I would do with water if I had my own house here in Bali. I don't, so that's what I'm making do with. Right, in terms of eating off plan, I do eat off plan, even though I am a bit of a robot when it comes to this game. I tend to eat off plan once a week, one off plan meal a week. In a push, it might be 2. If I'm dating chicas, it might be 3 times a week, depending on if I'm eating out or whatever. But if I'm honest, I don't like to eat off plan that much. I feel like it, you know, impairs digestion. Some meals can just not sit well, so I do prefer to just stay on point with my nutrition. In terms of sweets and stuff, I do try to limit that sort of stuff, just because although they can be easy calories, when you are eating processed carbohydrates, they do drive inflammation. So yes, you're getting the easy calories, but you're also getting the inflammation with it. And if inflammation goes through the roof, digestion inevitably will tank, because your body will not signal as high an appetite typically, which of course will then make the process of you adding muscle and staying lean even more difficult, because you've got the inflammation high, which causes the body to go into breakdown and not add muscle. And then you've also got the smashed appetite because the body's pissed off because of the inflammation. So yeah, occasionally I'll have sweets or ice cream and stuff, but I try to stay away from it. And if I am going to have something off plan, it's typically just a burger or pizza and maybe a small dessert. So staying on the topic of inflammation, again, in terms of calories during a push, you need to get them in. Some food sources like cereal do make getting calories in, especially carbohydrates, an easier task. However, I try to stay away from things like this. I'm not saying I don't program it. I might have to start programming it when my calories go sort of north of 5,000. Some of my clients I have on cereal. But if you're on like 3,000 calories and you can be eating rice instead, for example, shoot for that as opposed to a cereal, especially the sugary cereals. Not just because they drive inflammation, but mostly because they drive mineral deficiency, especially copper, which is really important from an energy creation perspective, and also in terms of immune health. You don't want to be tanking minerals like copper, which is what cereal does, because it's undergone fortification. So if you see this, all the vitamins and minerals that's added to the product, they do that in an attempt to boost the nutritional value. However, because the body doesn't recognize synthetic vitamins and minerals like it does proper vitamins and minerals from whole food, it stores what it can't use. So it will store things like iron, which is added. Yeah, look, iron's added to the cereal. And that's a big issue for health, because when iron's high, copper will descend, as will magnesium. And when minerals like that start to tank, that's when anxiety can kick in, because your ability to regulate your stress response drops, because you don't have the minerals that are needed to regulate stress. So Yeah, a pretty complicated game, nutrition, but fascinating. Well, it is in my opinion anyway. Okay fellas, grocery haul boxed, hopefully that was of use. Just dropped the food off at Annie's house, who's the cook, so she's gonna pattern that and drop it round tomorrow, which is fantastic. The next YouTube video is gonna be about training, so all things how to optimize training to maximize muscle gain. Obviously I'm in a push, body weight's ascending, so now's the time to really dial training in to accumulate that new muscle. So yeah, looking forward to running that up. I will catch you in the next one. Take care.